The human fleet returned to Earth 3 weeks later to a hero's welcome. Millions of people gathered at the space docks to cheer the returning ships. The Washington and her escorts had fought bravely, but everyone wanted to see the Phoenix and all the precious cargo she carried. Amy Collins was taken directly to the Children's Hospital in New York, where the best doctors on Earth were waiting for her. Dr. Nancy White, a specialist in treating traumatized children, took charge of her care. The girl was weak and scared, but she was alive and safe. "She's been through terrible things, Doctor," White explained to the reporters. "It will take time for her to heal, both physically and emotionally. But children are strong, and with love and care, she can recover." The world watched as Amy slowly began to heal. Her parents had died when their ship was attacked, so she was placed with her aunt and uncle in California. They were patient and loving, helping her remember what it felt like to be safe and cared for. President Amanda Price visited Amy in the hospital. The little girl was still very thin, but her eyes were brighter than they had been in months. She was starting to smile again, especially when the nurses brought her ice cream. "Thank you for bringing me home," Amy said quietly. "We will always come for our children," the president replied. "Always." The rescue of Amy Collins sent shockwaves through the galaxy. News of the human attack on the Zephyrian Empire spread to every known civilization. For the first time, a species had directly challenged the Zephyrians, and one ambassador, Peter Clark, found that other alien civilizations were suddenly much more interested in talking with humans. The Centaurian Federation, which had refused to help during the rescue, now wanted to discuss trade agreements. The Rigel Mining Union sent a delegation to Earth to meet with human leaders. "The galaxy is watching us," Clark reported to President Price. "Every species wants to know what we'll do next." The answer came when other enslaved species began rebelling against their Zephyrian masters. The Altarian Collective declared independence and asked for human support. The crystal beings of Vega 7 staged a massive uprising. Across Zephyrian space, the Empire was crumbling. Dr. Helen Foster was not surprised by these developments. The Zephyrians built their empire on the belief that they were naturally superior, she explained. When humans proved that belief wrong, it inspired everyone else to fight back. Earth quietly provided weapons and supplies to the rebelling species. Human ships appeared wherever the Zephyrians tried to crush the rebellions. The message was clear. Humanity would not allow the enslavement of innocent beings to continue. The Zephyrian Empire, which had controlled 17 star systems, began to collapse. Their military was spread too thin to fight multiple rebellions. At once, many of their ships were destroyed or captured by the rebels. Within 6 months, the Empire had lost half its territory. Admiral Hayes was promoted to Supreme Commander of all Earth forces. The rescue mission had proved that humans could project power across interstellar distances. The Earth Defense Fleet was expanded dramatically, with new ships designed for deep space operations. Colonel Miller was awarded the Medal of Honor for his leadership during the rescue operation. Sergeant Rodriguez and his Marines received the Silver Star, but they all said the real reward was seeing Amy Collins smile again. "We didn't do it for glory," Miller said at the ceremony. "We did it because she was one of ours, and we don't abandon our own." Amy Collins slowly recovered with the help of her new family and the best doctors on Earth. She had nightmares sometimes, but they became less frequent as time passed. She started attending school again and made friends with other children. 6 months after her rescue, Amy was invited to speak at the memorial service for the Marines who had died saving her. She was still small for her age, but she walked to the podium with confidence. "I want to thank the brave men and women who saved me," she said, her voice clear and strong. "They didn't know me, but they came anyway because they believed every person deserves to be free." The audience was silent as she continued. I learned that humans are special, not because we're stronger or smarter than other species, but because we care about each other. When one of us is hurt, we all feel it. When one of us is in danger, we all respond. President Price announced that Earth would establish a new military doctrine. Human ships would patrol the galaxy, looking for signs of slavery or abuse. Any species that mistreated innocent beings would face the consequences. We're not conquerors, she said in her speech. To the United Nations, we're protectors. We will use our strength to defend those who cannot defend themselves. The galaxy was changing. The Zephyrian Empire was almost gone, replaced by free democratic governments. Trade routes that had been controlled by the Empire were now open to all species. The balance of power had shifted dramatically, but other alien empires took notice. The draconian hegemony, which had been planning to expand into human space, quietly abandoned their plans. The insectoid collective signed a non-aggression treaty with Earth. Nobody wanted to face the fury that had destroyed the Zephyrians. Amy Collins became a symbol of human determination and compassion. Her story was told in every school on Earth and in the colonies. Children learned that their planet would never abandon them, no matter how far away they might be. 1 year after her rescue, Amy visited the space docks where the Phoenix was being refitted. Captain Davis showed her around the ship that had brought her home. The girl touched the walls and remembered the day she had been carried aboard, scared and weak. This ship saved my life, Amy said. No, Captain Davis replied. The people who flew it saved your life. The ship was just the tool they used. Amy nodded, understanding the difference. It wasn't the machines that had rescued her, but the humans who operated them. People who cared enough to risk their lives for a child they had never met. The memorial wall in the ship's corridor listed the names of the Marines who had died in the rescue operation. Amy read each name carefully, trying to remember their faces. These men and women had given their lives so that she could go home. As Amy grew older, she often spoke about her experience. She told people that the most important thing she had learned was that humans would never give up on each other. No matter how dark things seemed, help was always coming. The rescue of 3 weeks after leaving Earth, a human fleet arrived at the edge of the Kethmoran system. The planet hung in space like a dark jewel, orbiting a red dwarf star. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the Washington, watching the enemy world. Through the main viewer, "Sensor report," he ordered. 31 Zephyrian vessels in orbit, sir, reported Lieutenant Commander Kate Turner. They're arranged in a defensive formation around the planet. The trophy facility is showing up on thermal scans at the North Pole. Hayes nodded. The Zephyrians had no idea they were coming. Human stealth technology was more advanced than the aliens realized. The fleet had approached from the dark side of the system, using the planet's shadow to hide their arrival. Signal. The Phoenix, Hayes ordered. Begin the rescue operation. The Phoenix moved ahead of the main fleet, its hull painted black to avoid detection. Captain Lavra Davis guided the ship through the asteroid field that surrounded the planet. Behind her, Colonel Miller and his rescue team prepared their weapons and equipment. Remember the plan, Miller told his Marines. We go in fast, find the girl, and get out before they can organize a response. Sergeant Rodriguez, your team takes the lower levels. I'll head straight for the trophy hall. The Marines checked their rifles and armor one final time. Each man and woman knew they might not survive the mission, but they were determined to save Amy Collins. Sergeant Rodriguez looked at the photos of the little girl that were taped to the wall. She's been in there for 6 months, he said quietly. That's too long for any child to suffer. Dr. Chris Parker was ready with medical supplies and sedatives. The girl will be traumatized and probably drugged. I need to examine her immediately to make sure she's stable for transport. The Phoenix reached the planet's atmosphere and began its descent. The ship's stealth systems kept it hidden from Zephyrian sensors, but they wouldn't work much longer. Once the shooting started, the whole planet would know they were there. 2 minutes to landing, Captain Davis announced. Meanwhile, the main fleet prepared to engage the orbital defenses. The Washington's fighter squadrons were ready to launch. The Liberty's main guns were charged and targeting enemy ships. Admiral Hayes watched the tactical display as his ships moved into position. All ships, this is Admiral Hayes. We're here to rescue a human child who has been tortured for entertainment. Show these aliens what happens when they threaten our children. Begin the attack. The space battle erupted with incredible violence. The Washington's fighters swept down on the Zephyrian ships, their missiles lighting up the darkness. The Liberty's massive guns sent streams of plasma into the enemy formation. The human fleet fought with desperate fury, knowing that every second counted. The Zephyrians were caught off guard by the sudden attack. Their ships were powerful, but they had been expecting a normal patrol, not a full-scale assault. Human missiles punched through their shields and exploded against their hulls. On the planet's surface, the Phoenix landed near the trophy facility. The building was enormous, rising 50 stories into the thin atmosphere. Automated defense turrets swiveled toward the human ship and opened fire. Go! Go! Miller shouted dot. The Marine teams poured out of the Phoenix, their rifles blazing. The Zephyrian guards were tall creatures with thick shells and multiple arms, but human weapons were designed to penetrate armor. The Marines moved with practiced efficiency, clearing each corridor as they advanced. Rodriguez led his team through the lower levels, fighting past automated defenses and surprised guards. The aliens were tough opponents, but they had never faced humans in combat before. The Marines' determination and superior tactics gradually overcame the defenders. Level 20 cleared, Rodriguez reported over the radio. Moving to level 25. Miller's team fought their way up the central elevator shaft. The Zephyrians had sealed the doors, but human explosives blasted through the barriers. The colonel led from the front, his rifle cutting down any alien that tried to stop him. We're almost to the trophy hall, Miller said. Status report on the girl. Still showing life signs, Turner reported from the Phoenix. She's in the main display area on level 47. The trophy hall was a massive room filled with prisoners from dozens of worlds. Creatures of all shapes and sizes were trapped behind energy barriers, while alien tourists pointed and stared. The sight made the Marines even more angry. And there, in the center of the hall, was Amy Collins. The 12-year-old girl was curled up in the corner of her cell, looking even smaller and more frightened than in the original footage. Her clothes were dirty and torn. She was very thin, and her eyes were dull from whatever drugs they had given her. Target acquired, Miller said. Dr. Parker, get ready. Lieutenant Commander Turner worked frantically to disable the energy barrier. The Zephyrian technology was complex, but human computers were faster. Sparks flew as she overrode the security systems. Field down, she shouted. Miller rushed into the cell and knelt beside Amy Collins. The girl looked up at him with scared eyes, not understanding what was happening. She had been a prisoner for so long that she had almost forgotten what freedom looked like. Amy, my name is Colonel Miller. I'm from Earth. We're here to take you home. The girl's eyes widened. Home? She whispered. That's right, sweetheart. We're going to get you out of here. Dr. Parker quickly examined Amy while the Marines held off the Zephyrian guards who were trying to retake the trophy hall. The girl was malnourished and drugged, but she was alive and could be moved. She's stable, Parker reported. But we need to get her to the ship immediately. Miller gently picked up Amy and carried her toward the exit. The girl was so light that he could barely feel her weight. Around them, the other prisoners watched through their barriers, hoping they might also be freed. "Sir, we can't leave the others," Rodriguez said, looking at the trapped creatures. "I know," Miller replied. "Turner, can you shut down all the barriers?" "Working." "On it, sir." The space battle above was intensifying. The Washington had taken damage from Zephyrian plasma cannons, but her fighters were winning the fight. The Liberty had destroyed 3 enemy ships, and the human fleet was pushing through the orbital defenses. "Phoenix, this is Admiral Hayes. How's the rescue operation?" "We have the girl," Captain Davis reported, "but we're taking heavy fire. The whole planet is mobilizing against us." Miller's team fought their way back to the Phoenix while carrying Amy Collins. The girl was barely conscious, but she seemed to understand that these humans were trying to help her. She held onto Miller's uniform with weak hands. "Almost there, sweetheart," he said. "Just a little farther." The Phoenix was surrounded by Zephyrian troops, but the Marines had trained for this. They fought with incredible skill and determination, knowing that Amy's life depended on their success. Several Marines were wounded, but they kept fighting. Turner managed to disable most of the energy barriers in the trophy hall. Creatures from a dozen worlds ran free for the first time in months or years. The Zephyrians were so confused by the chaos that they couldn't organize an effective response. "Barriers down," Turner shouted. "All prisoners are free." The Phoenix lifted off, just as Zephyrian reinforcements arrived. The ship's weapons held off the enemy, while the rescued prisoners were brought aboard. Amy Collins was rushed to the medical bay, where Dr. Parker began treating her immediately. "She's going to be okay," Parker told Miller. "Malnourished and traumatized, but she'll recover." In space, the human fleet was winning the battle. The Zephyrian ships were retreating, and the orbital defenses were collapsing. Admiral Hayes had achieved his objective, the rescue of Amy Collins and the punishment of her captors. "All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump," Hayes ordered. "We're going home." As the fleet jumped to hyperspace, Colonel Miller sat beside Amy Collins in the medical bay. The girl was sleeping peacefully for the first time in months, safe in the knowledge that she was finally going home. The mission had been successful, but the real work of helping her heal was just beginning. The largest military mobilization in human history began at dawn. Ships that had been patrolling the outer colonies received emergency orders to return to Earth. The space docks around Earth's moon buzzed with activity as crews worked around the clock to prepare for war. Admiral Hayes stood in the command center, watching dozens of screens showing ship positions across the solar system. The carrier Washington was already moving toward Earth, its escort ships falling into formation. Around it, the battleship Liberty was pulling back from the Mars defense line. Even the older ships from the reserve fleet were being brought out of storage. Captain Steve Miller arrived at Fleet Command, still wearing his civilian clothes. He had been fishing on Mars when the call came, but he dropped everything to answer his country's call. Admiral Hayes greeted him personally. "Steve, I need you to lead the rescue operation," Hayes said. "You know boarding actions better than anyone." Miller nodded. "I saw the footage, sir. That little girl shouldn't spend another day in that place. The assault carrier Phoenix is being prepared for you. Pick your team and plan the operation. We leave in 72 hours. Miller walked through the ship selection areas, looking at the men and women who would join the rescue mission. These were the best soldiers Earth had to offer. Many had families of their own and understood what was at stake. Sergeant Tony Rodriguez was loading equipment onto a transport when Miller found him. Rodriguez was a tough Marine who had led more boarding actions than anyone in the fleet. His dark eyes showed the anger that every human felt about Amy Collins. "Sergeant, I need you to pick 20 Marines for a special mission. Miller said. "The rescue operation, sir?" Rodriguez asked. "That's right. We're going to get that girl back." Rodriguez smiled grimly. "I'll get you the best fighters in the fleet, sir. The aliens won't know what hit them." The Phoenix was a newer ship designed for quick strikes and boarding actions. It had heavy armor and powerful weapons, but it was also fast enough to get in and out of enemy territory quickly. Captain Lara Davis would command the ship while Miller led the rescue team in the intelligence section. Lieutenant Commander Kate Turner was studying everything they knew about the Zephyrian Empire. She had spent years learning about alien technology and military tactics. The walls of her office were covered with pictures of Zephyrian ships and weapons. "The trophy facility is on the planet Kethmoran," she explained to Miller and his team. "It's at the North Pole, heavily defended with energy shields and automated weapons. The building is about 50 stories tall, and the trophy displays are on the upper levels." "What about the orbital defenses?" asked Captain Davis. 30 ships, mostly older models. But they have plasma weapons that can punch through our shields. We'll need to hit them hard and fast." Dr. Helen Foster joined the planning team to help them understand Zephyrian psychology. "They're confident in their superiority," she said. "They won't expect humans to attack them directly. That might give us an advantage." Medical Officer Dr. Chris Parker was preparing for the worst. He had studied the footage of Amy Collins and could see signs of malnutrition and stress. "The girl will need immediate medical attention," he said. "I'm bringing everything we might need to treat physical and emotional trauma." Meanwhile, Earth's diplomats were working to secure safe passage through neutral space. Ambassador Peter Clark was meeting with representatives from the Centauri Federation, trying to convince them to stay out of the conflict. The Centaurians were peaceful traders who didn't want to anger the Zephyrians. "We understand your position," Clark told the Centaurian ambassador, "but we're not asking you to fight. We just need to pass through your space. The Zephyrians have threatened to destroy any species that helps you," the ambassador replied. "We have families too." "So do we," Clark said. "And one of our children is being tortured for entertainment. We're going to get her back with or without your help." The public pressure was enormous. Protests continued in every major city. People held candlelight vigils for Amy Collins. Her picture was on every news channel. The whole world was united in demanding action. In the shipyards, workers were putting in 18-hour days to get the fleet ready. The Washington's fighter squadrons were being restocked with the newest missiles. The Liberty's main guns were being calibrated for maximum power. Every ship was being loaded with extra supplies for the long journey. Colonel Miller reviewed the rescue plan one more time. The main fleet would engage the orbital defenses while the Phoenix slipped through to the planet's surface. The rescue team would fight their way to the trophy facility, find Amy Collins, and extract her before the Zephyrians could respond. "It's dangerous," Miller told his team. "We'll be fighting on their home ground, far from any support. Some of us might not make it back." "That's a risk we're willing to take," Sergeant Rodriguez said. "That little girl is counting on us." The team spent hours studying the facility layout. They practiced boarding actions on a mock-up built in the Phoenix's cargo bay. Every Marine knew exactly what to do and where to go. There would be no mistakes. Dr. Foster provided crucial intelligence about Zephyrian combat tactics. "They're strong and tough, but they're not used to fighting determined opponents. They expect other species to surrender quickly. When humans fight back harder than expected, it confuses them." As the fleet prepared to depart, President Price visited the Washington to speak with the crews. She stood on the ship's bridge, looking out at the dozens of vessels that would carry Earth's fury to the stars. "You carry with you the hopes and prayers of all humanity," she told the assembled officers. "That little girl in the alien prison represents everything we stand for: the protection of the innocent and the value of every human life." Admiral Hayes gave the final briefing to his fleet commanders. We're not just rescuing one child. We're showing the galaxy that humanity will not be pushed around. Every species out there will be watching to see what we do. The fleet began to move. One by one, the ships activated their hyperspace engines and disappeared into the void. Washington led the way, followed by the Liberty and dozens of other vessels. The Phoenix would arrive first to begin the rescue operation. As the last ship vanished into hyperspace, Earth fell silent. The whole planet was holding its breath, waiting to see if their children would come home. In living rooms around the world, families watched the news and prayed for the success of the mission. Amy Collins had no idea that help was coming. She sat in her prison cell, watched by alien creatures who saw her as nothing more than entertainment. But across the galaxy, the most powerful military force humanity had ever assembled was racing toward her. The Zephyrians thought they were superior, but they were about to face the fury of a species that would never abandon its children. The message from Captain Morrison reached Earth Command at exactly 3:47 a.m. Eastern Time. The duty officer, Lieutenant Ben Carter, almost fell out of his chair when he saw the footage. He had never seen anything so terrible in his 10 years of service. Within minutes, he was calling every important person in the government, and military. President Amanda Price was sleeping in the White House when her phone rang. She was used to emergency calls, but the tone in her assistant's voice told her this was different. Madam President, you need to see this immediately. We're setting up a secure video link now. Amanda sat up in bed and turned on the screen in her bedroom. When she saw the footage of Amy Collins trapped behind the energy barrier, she felt a cold anger fill her chest. She had 2 daughters of her own, and seeing that frightened child made her want to scream. How old is this footage? She asked. The transmission was intercepted 2 hours ago, but it appears to be live, her assistant replied. The girl is alive right now, ma'am. Amanda was already getting dressed. Call an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. I want every representative there in 4 hours. And get me Admiral Hayes immediately. Across the world, government leaders were waking up to the same horrible news. Prime Minister Robert Taylor in London watched the footage with his hands shaking. President Liu Wei in Beijing had to leave the room to compose himself. Every leader had the same reaction: shock, horror, and burning anger. Admiral Connor Hayes was already in his office at Fleet Command when the president called. He was a tall man with gray hair and hard eyes who had spent 40 years defending Earth. He had seen war and death, but nothing had prepared him for this. Admiral, I need options, President Price said when she reached him. That child cannot stay in that place one more day than necessary. I understand, Madam President. I'm already pulling together everything we know about the Zephyrian Empire. Hayes looked at the star charts on his wall. They control 17 star systems and have a large fleet, but their forces are spread thin across their territory. I don't care if they control 100 systems, Amanda said. We're getting that girl back. The news spread quickly around Earth. Within hours, every television channel was showing the footage. People stopped what they were doing to watch. Parents held their children closer. Workers left their jobs to stand in crowds outside government. Buildings. In New York, thousands of people gathered in Times Square, holding signs that said, "Bring Amy home," and "Justice for Humanity." The crowd was angry but peaceful, united in their demand for action. Similar crowds formed in every major city on Earth. Dr. Helen Foster, Earth's top expert on alien psychology, was called to the emergency meeting. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but her knowledge of alien cultures was vast. She had spent 20 years studying how different species thought and acted. The Zephyrians see other species as animals, she explained to the council. They believe they are naturally superior to everyone else. This trophy display is how they prove their dominance. To them, we are no different from the other creatures they have captured. What does that mean for negotiation? Asked Senator Mike Stone. It means negotiation is almost impossible, Dr. Foster replied. They would see any diplomatic contact as weakness. In their minds, if we were truly equal to them, we would have already conquered them. The council chamber was filled with angry voices. Representative Lisa Brown from California stood up. Then we show them what humans are really capable of. We get our child back and make sure they never do this again. President Price called for order. I want a full military assessment in 1 hour. Admiral Hayes, what would it take to rescue that girl? Admiral Hayes had been preparing for this question. We would need to mobilize the entire Earth Defense Fleet. The Zephyrian system is 3 weeks away at maximum speed. We would be fighting far from home with no backup. How many ships do we have? Asked Defense Secretary Carol West. The main fleet has 52 combat vessels, including the carrier Washington and her escort ships. We could also call up the reserve fleet and pull ships from colony defense duty. In total, maybe 80 ships. And the Zephyrians? Intelligence suggests they have about 200 ships, but most are spread across their empire. The trophy world of Kethmoran is defended by maybe 30 vessels. The room was quiet for a moment as everyone thought about the odds. Fighting an alien empire was dangerous, but nobody wanted to abandon Amy Collins. What about the other species they have captured? Asked Ambassador Peter Clark. Are we just rescuing the human girl? Dr. Foster spoke up. The footage shows at least a dozen other species being held as trophies. If we're going to do this, we should try to free all of them. President Price looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. She could see the determination in their eyes. I want a vote. All in favor of military action to rescue Amy Collins and any other captives? Every hand in the room went up. Not one person voted against the rescue mission. Admiral Hayes, you have full authorization to mobilize the fleet. Use whatever resources you need. I want that girl brought home. Outside, the crowds were growing larger. News reporters spoke into cameras while people chanted behind them. The whole world was watching and waiting for their leaders to act. Social. Media exploded with posts about Amy Collins. Her school picture was shared millions of times. People who had never met her felt like she was part of their family. The hashtag Bring Amy Home was trending in every language dot in the Fleet Command Center. Admiral Hayes was already making calls. Ships across the solar system received orders to return to Earth immediately. Retired officers were called back to duty. The biggest military operation in human history was about to begin. Captain Steve Miller, who had been enjoying retirement on Mars, packed his uniform when the call came. He had served in the Outer Colony Wars and knew what it meant to fight for innocent lives. Within hours, he was on a transport ship heading back to Earth. The message was clear to every human on Earth and in the colonies. One of their own was in danger, and they would move heaven and earth to bring her home. The aliens had made a terrible mistake when they chose to display a human child as a trophy. They were about to learn that humans would go to any length to protect their children. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the research ship Horizon, watching the stars through the wide window. The ship moved slowly through space near the Proxima Centauri system. Jake had been exploring space for 15 years, but he still loved the quiet beauty of the stars. His crew was doing their regular work, checking for new planets and strange signals from deep space. Lisa Grant sat at her station, listening to radio waves from far away. She was the best communications officer Jake had ever worked with. Her job was to catch any interesting signals that might tell them about new worlds or alien life. Today seemed like any other day until her equipment started making unusual sounds. "Captain, I'm getting something strange," Lisa said. her voice tight with worry. "It's a transmission from the Zephyrian Empire. The signal is very strong, like they want everyone to hear it." Jake walked over to her station. The Zephyrians were known across the galaxy as a race that conquered other planets and treated weaker species badly. They were tall, with hard shells like insects, and they believed they were better than everyone else. Most ships tried to avoid them. "What kind of transmission?" Jake asked. Lisa's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "It looks like some kind of broadcast, maybe entertainment or news." "Should I put it on the main screen?" "Do it," Jake said. "Let's see what they're up to." The main screen flickered to life. The image showed a large room with bright lights and many strange creatures walking around. It looked like some kind of museum or display hall. Alien visitors pointed at different exhibits while making excited sounds. The camera moved from one display to another, showing creatures from many different worlds trapped behind glowing barriers. Ryan Burke, the ship's tactical officer, came closer to watch. He was a tough man who had fought in many space battles. "Looks like they're showing off their conquered species," he said with anger in his voice. The camera kept moving through the hall. They saw creatures with multiple arms, beings made of living crystal, and things that looked like walking trees. Each one was trapped in a small space, while aliens stared at them like they were animals in a zoo. Then the camera stopped at one display that made everyone on the bridge freeze. Behind a shimmering energy barrier stood a small human girl. She looked about 12 years old, with brown hair and scared eyes. Her clothes were torn and dirty. She sat in the corner of her prison, looking very thin and frightened. A sign next to her display had writing in the Zephyrian language. "Oh my God," Lisa whispered, her hand covering her mouth. Jake felt his heart stop. In all his years of space travel, he had never seen anything so horrible. The girl was clearly human, but she was being displayed like a trophy for aliens to stare at. "Lisa, can you translate that sign?" Jake asked, his voice shaking. Lisa worked at her computer for a moment. "It says primitive human, captured from the outer rim, example of lesser species intelligence." Ryan Burke made a sound of pure anger. "They're keeping a human child as a pet for their entertainment." The camera stayed on the girl for several long minutes. She looked up at the visitors with fear in her eyes. Sometimes she would curl up in the corner when too many aliens crowded around her display. The creatures watching her pointed and made sounds that might have been laughter. Jake watched the girl and felt sick. "Lisa, do we have any records of missing ships from the outer colonies?" Lisa quickly searched through their database. "Yes, sir. The transport ship New Dawn went missing 6 months ago near the rim colonies. It was carrying families to a new settlement." Among the passengers was Amy Collins, age 12, traveling with her parents. "That's her," Jake said quietly. "That's Amy Collins." The transmission showed more of the trophy hall, but Jake could not look away from the human girl. She was so small and alone among all those alien creatures. Her parents were probably dead, and she had been taken as a prize to be displayed for entertainment. "Sir, what are we going to do?" Lisa asked. Jake thought for a moment. The Zephyrian Empire was powerful and dangerous. They had many ships and advanced weapons. But looking at that frightened child, he knew there was only one thing to do. Record everything, he ordered. Every second of this transmission. Then prepare an emergency message to Earth Command. Make it priority 1. "Sir, the Zephyrians won't like us interfering," Ryan said. "They might attack us." Jake looked at the screen where Amy Collins sat in her prison. "I don't care what they like. That's a human child being treated like an animal. Earth needs to know about this right now." Lisa worked quickly to record the transmission and prepare the message. The footage would travel through quantum communication networks to reach Earth in just a few hours. Jake knew that once Earth saw this, everything would change. "Message ready, sir," Lisa reported. "Send it," Jake said. "And Lisa, make sure they know that girl is still alive. Earth will want to know that Amy Collins is still breathing." As the message shot across space toward Earth, Jake watched the transmission continue. The Zephyrians had no idea that their trophy display was about to bring down the fury of an entire planet upon them. They thought humans were weak and primitive, but they were about to learn how wrong they were. The little girl on the screen had no idea that help was coming. But Jake knew that soon, very soon, the entire human race would be working to bring her home.